Many of us have been appalled over and over by the ongoing attempts by both the government and the opposition to try to win votes by being ever more hostile and inhospitable to asylum seekers and refugees. Detention centres in remote outback locations or overseas island states, ankle bracelet surveillance, impossible visa requirements. We may not have gone the full Trump and begun rounding everyone up and flying them straight out of the country, but it seems that our politicians are similarly convinced of the electoral popularity of shutting out the world's poor and desperate. What an unpleasant contrast it all makes. The spirit of the immigrant welcoming inscription on New York's Statue of Liberty. It says, "Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free, the wretched refuse of your teeming shore. Send these, the homeless, tempest-tossed, to me. I lift my lamp beside the golden door." And that inscription reminds me of the words of God in the opening verse of tonight's reading from the prophet Isaiah. "Oh, everyone who thirsts, come to the waters. And you that have no money, come, buy and eat. Come, buy wine and milk without money and without price." The context of those words is not specifically about immigration and asylum seeking, although a couple of verses later in our reading, it does say, "Nations that do not know you shall run to you." But it is the spirit of the words rather than their specific application that seems so similar to me. You see, what underpins the fear-filled bile being peddled by our politicians on both sides is a fundamentally different view of the world. A view that is convinced that everything that matters in the world is in scarce supply, and that therefore, if we let anybody else get a share, we will end up without enough ourselves. This view of the world sets us in competition with one another, and the more deeply we feel the scarcity and the consequent threat, the more we will sense that that competition really is a matter of life or death. We begin to imagine that the whole world is like one of those scenes of the arrival of a food aid truck in a place badly stricken by famine, where people fight and scrap and climb over one another in their desperation to secure for themselves a share of the scarce nourishment. But over and over, the Bible tells us that God does not share this view of the world. "My thoughts are not your thoughts," says the Lord, "nor are my ways your ways." God created this world and filled it with an abundance of every good thing. And story after story gives us a vision of this abundance as God sees it. The stories of Jesus feeding the crowds when there seemed to be just a few loaves and fish to start with, and there were baskets full left over, are a classic example of this message. When everyone is perceiving only scarcity, Jesus sees abundance and invites us to see it and partake of it and enjoy it. "Oh, everyone who thirsts, come to the waters. You that have no money, come, buy and eat. Come, buy wine and milk without money and without price." The truth is that we don't live in a world of genuine scarcity. Even now that the world's human population has gone over the 8 billion mark, the planet still produces more than enough food to feed everyone abundantly. Certainly, there are parts of the world that have some serious scarcities, but modern transportation means that we have the means to distribute the food if we have the will to do so. But in a competitive user pays world, the will to do so is the one genuine scarcity. And why? Well, largely because a widespread perception of scarcity, genuine or not, has become necessary to the whole way the world's economic system works. Some economists even admit that the basic principles of capitalism are impossible to explain unless a scarcity of resources is taken for granted as one of the starting assumptions. And so much of the time, a perception of scarcity is being manufactured because the economy needs people to be afraid of missing out in order for them to put a value on acquiring things. And if everybody has an abundance of something, then a new version comes out and appetites are fanned and we are persuaded that we need to get it now while stocks last. Have you noticed that in the last decade, every time there's a hard rubbish collection, the nature strips are full of television sets, most of which still work perfectly well? There was an abundance of televisions, but all of a sudden we needed a big flat screen one because what if everyone else had one and we missed out? And there's no end to the cycle because the happiness and fulfillment promised with every purchase always turns out to be a mirage. And there is immediately something else on the horizon that we can't be truly content until we've acquired. You'd think Isaiah was writing a column in a modern newspaper when he says, "Why do you spend your money for that which is not bread and your labor for that which does not satisfy?" Except that if he kept saying things like that, today's billionaire media barons wouldn't let him write it in their newspapers. All of this is a profoundly spiritual problem, not just a problem confined to economic culture. Once our worldview is shaped by an assumption of scarcity, we bring that assumption to our relationships with ourselves, with one another, and with God. We imagine that resources like love and mercy and acceptance and contentment are also limited commodities, and that we have to strive for them and defend them and compete for them and make sure others are not getting our share. We've been immunized against recognizing and understanding the biblical images of God pouring out blessings in generous abundance, in good measure, pressed down, shaken together, running over. We've been immunized by a world that believes that the ultimate truth is that there is no such thing as a free lunch. But my thoughts are not your thoughts, says the Lord, nor are your ways my ways. And the God made known to us in Jesus does not seem to believe that there's no such thing as a free lunch. Oh, everyone who thirsts, come to the waters, and you that have no money, come buy and eat. Come buy wine and milk without mercy, without money and without price. One of the reasons we are so scandalized by the extravagant mercy that Jesus spoke of and lavished on us is that it is offered to everyone else too, including people who clearly don't deserve it. And of course, the delicious irony of that feeling is that it exposes our blind arrogance in thinking that we do deserve it, or that at least we're more deserving of it than those people. And then Jesus turns around, both grieved and probably amused by our conceit, and goes right on forgiving us even for our vanity and greed and hard-heartedness. For there is no limit to his capacity for mercy, but still we rebel because we've been well taught in the ways of most valuing that which not everyone can yet attain. We desperately want what we see other people desiring, and we crave to be among the chosen few who are most envied for already having what everyone else most values, but few can obtain. And if God's love and mercy and our acceptance are abundantly available even to the least deserving, what value can we put on them? Our whole engagement with the divine economy crumbles into confusion. All of this is very bad news so long as our concept of winning means rising above others and seeing them lose. It is very bad news for those of us who are proud of having managed to prove ourselves worthy by our superior virtue or superior understanding or superior deeds or accomplishments, and who have been confidently anticipating our superior rewards accordingly. It's not that these things are not valued in God's economy. God delights greatly in whatever good and wonderful things we achieve. It's just that God's love and delight and generous blessings are lavished so richly on us already that more of them will not set us above anyone else. There is no scarcity. And God's generosity is not carefully conserved and measured out in merit-based handfuls. But all of this is only bad news if you are determinedly clinging to an economic view of the world where you gain the most by proving yourself better than others. If you've tried that and lost, or you've done well in that and realized that the paradise at the top of the ladder is only a mirage and the winners are just as restlessly unsatisfied as the losers, then this is very, very good news. For Jesus invites us into a whole new world of extravagant abundance, where we can delight both in our own richness and in the richness of our neighbor. It's not yet a world where nothing goes wrong. Our gospel reading reminded us accidents and atrocities still happen. But these are not part of an economy of punishments for those who deserve them. In this new world, those of us who most deserve to be punished will be those who are most surprised by the joy of extravagant mercy and love. It is all laid out before you, and your place is booked. It all begins right here around the Lord's table, where a single loaf of bread and a single bottle of wine are blessed and offered to us by our risen Lord and are discovered to be not signs of scarcity at all, but signs of the generous fulfillment of our deepest hungers and hopes. Oh, everyone who thirsts, come to the waters, and you that have no money, come, buy and eat. Come, receive without money and without price, bread and wine and milk and love and mercy and acceptance and asylum and welcome in generous abundance, pressed down, shaken together, running over, more than enough for all the world to share.